Howdy, my name is Derek Henry, and in this video we're going to cover 12 awesome new features in this quarterly update of the XLEV8 add-in that are going to save you a lot of time and just make Excel easier. Got a lot to cover, so let's get started. First of all, if you've been living under a rock the last couple of years, you may not have noticed that now Excel formulas can spill values across multiple cells down or across. So why is that important? Because this formula, if we don't want to have to update it manually when we have data that changes, we can use a spillable formula. So what we want to do is have that formula spill all the way down to row 62 here. How are we going to do that? Well, right now we've got references to cell B2, C2, and D2, and to make it spillable, we need those to be arrays. So we're going to use a macro called toggle spilled formula here. And what this is going to do is say, hey, how many rows down do you potentially want this to ever grow to? 5,000 is the default I set for a lot of these, but you can make that a lot bigger if you have a lot more data. So what it does is it converts that B2 to a combination of offset, max, and count A, and it turns it into an array, which makes this perfectly spillable down to the last place. And if we have more data, let's just say we want to add that right there, it's just going to spill it for us. So it's an awesome way to make your formula spillable and make your files more dynamic. And if you want to get rid of that and put it back, you absolutely can. Just run the same macro again, and it senses that combination of offset, max, and count A, takes it away, as long as you press remove there. Another place that you can save a lot of time is with finding and toggling between hidden columns and rows. So with this sheet we got here, just a lot of data. You can notice that there are gaps between columns C and H, J and U, and some of the rows as well. As an auditor, I had to hunt and peck for a lot of these hidden cells because if you're not looking for them, they're very easy to miss and they present risk of things that maybe you don't want in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a macro called toggle hidden cells. The first time you run this, it takes stock of everything in the file that's hidden. If nothing is hidden, it tells you that and it says, hey, do you want to build a sheet to hide things quickly? Okay. So in this case, nothing else happens other than taking that list. Okay. So it creates a hidden sheet with a list on it. If we run it again, okay, what it's going to do is say, hey, do you want to unhide all of those cells in just this sheet or every sheet in the file? Now, in this example, we're just going to hide the unactive, and notice that we have all of these columns and rows that opened up. And that's great because then you can take a look and make sure there's nothing crazy hiding in there. But at that point, you might say, great, now I have to manually go through and hide those. Not anymore. If we run this again, it then presents us and says, hey, do you want to hide all of those columns and rows in the active sheet or all sheets? So you probably would click all. Okay, and notice we're right back to where we started. So toggling that is amazing because you don't have to manually do it anymore. The same can happen with hidden sheets. Okay, so we're going to run a very similar one called toggle hidden sheets. Again, the first time you run this, it makes a list of all the sheets that were hidden in its own hidden sheet. So if we run it one more time at some point later on or right away, we can say, hey, we want to toggle all those hidden sheets and unhide them because by default they are hidden. Okay, notice all these sheets now that got unhidden, all the yellow ones with the big red letters. You might do some things with them. They might be spread all throughout your file, and you might say, okay, now I'm ready to hide them again or delete them or whatever the case is. If you need to hide them again, very much like the columns and rows, you can run this and say, hey, do we want to hide these all? Well, of course we do, right? Or we may want to refresh what the list of the hidden ones is. So awesome way to save time and reduce risk. Another way to save time is reusing your efforts. So this one is called search formulas. What this lets you do is take a formula that you wrote and spend a lot of time on. You want to reuse that over and over again. Could be in any file, and it allows you to save them in a searchable list. So we're going to run this. It is called search formulas. Okay? And again, just with autocomplete, you can search through all the different formulas that you might have run before, anywhere in the formula. In this case, I know I've got the mid function that I want to use for one of these. Notice that it shows you the file name, the entire formula, in case you have a really long, hairy one that goes off the line at the top. When did you last save it? What cell was it in? Now, you can shift the reference because originally it might have been in cell G13. Well, we've got a different cell selected, F9 here. We might want to shift that such that we don't have ref errors and that we're referencing what we need. Maybe it's a cell next to it or above it, or etc. We're going to run this second one here, okay? And notice it makes a formula just how we want, what was in the middle of this sentence. So if you make a lot of formulas, this is a great way to reuse your efforts. Now, this next one is really helpful for when we're trying to build out a data source list. Several times in my experience, I've had to create a unique list of all the combinations of a financial line item and a store and a period. So in this case, we've got 100 line items, 50 stores, 36 periods. And if you do the math on that, multiply it out, that's 180,000 records we need to create. So we're going to run a macro called create data table. And what this does is it says, hey, make sure you got the header selected. Do you want to create this many records from that range? Yes, we do. And in a matter of seconds, it says, hey, we created all of these records. Here's our headers. And then down below, you can see where it's made a unique combination of every one of those looping through. I used to have several hacks to do this and it took a few minutes. Now it takes seconds. Another way you might want to save time is by setting all kinds of formats that you want to use across multiple ranges or sheets within those ranges, or even files that contain those sheets and ranges. So if you want to reuse that effort or say, we got to make all these changes to the formats, all kinds of formats can be changed with this. This makes it super efficient. So on this sheet over here, we've got a lot of really bland content. We're going to run this macro to use these settings right here I've preset. So we're going to run bulk format cells. It's going to leverage all of those settings. And notice, now it's all prettier. Well, in theory, maybe it's not so much pretty, but at least it's worked as we expected. Now, another one that we are going to run here, if you press Windows and V, notice that it shows you the clipboard, okay? And you can do emojis, look for animated GIFs, etc. In my career, I've often done demonstrations, very much like this one, or presentations where I need to paste things to prevent the need to enter a lot of text. So what we're going to do is run a macro called copy multi-clipboard. And what it's going to do is take all the values in this sheet, okay, copy them to the clipboard so you can easily reuse them again. Now it's going to copy in reverse order. So if you want to have them in a certain order to follow a script, you might want to do it backwards. But what you can then do is press Windows V and they are in your clipboard exactly as you would expect. Again, reverse order. So the fifth one here is the first one. So you might want to flip those. Super helpful if you do demos and presentations a lot like I do. Now, you might have the need to pause conditional formats. So if we look at this particular example, I've got some banding in play here. So it's automatically shading the alternating rows. Let's say we want to pause that so we can do some review, because remember, conditional formatting overwrites fixed formatting. So we're going to run this, and it is Option P in the conditional formatting picker. Okay, so that P is going to pause it. Okay, you can do that for all sheets or just this sheet, whichever one you feel like. Notice that it goes away. Now the conditional formatting is still here. If we run this, you can see. Here's the one that we have. We've got a special rule right here that's identifying, and it's stopping everything below it. Okay. So if you want to toggle that off, just run it again. And it's gone. Your conditional formatting is back in play. Now, let's say you have a lot of errors in your formulas, or maybe you can't really see them because there's a whole bunch of text and everything. Maybe you want to highlight errors. So we're running a conditional formatting picker. Option E is going to highlight the errors for us. Works just like expected. We can then move through those and fix the formulas, find out what's going on. Just like that, we can highlight text lengths. Okay, so we're going to run that same conditional formatting picker. This guy's gotten a lot more powerful this update, and we're going to run Option L for lengths. Okay, now it's going to ask you and say, what operator do you want to use? All the standard operators are available. How many characters do you want to compare to? You can set your default if it's always the same. So in this case, I want to highlight everything over, actually let's say 20 this time. So we're going to highlight everything, and notice, highlights it for us. Now you could easily type that out, but typing out formulas takes a lot of time. This just makes it easier. Now, this is a big one for reducing risk. What we want to do is highlight any formulas that have hard-coded values in the parts to the formula. So notice this one has a 1 at the end because we have an if error wrapped in it. You know, that might be intentional. Let's say it's not. And we want to be able to identify when there's any hard-coded values of any kind. So not references, okay? So we're going to run that same conditional formatting picker. We're going to use Option F for highlighting hard-coded value formula values. You could also type 2, and it will also give you the resulting value if it's a hard-coded one. So what this does is uses a conditional formatting formula to do this. So notice this first one, no hard-coded parts. Second one has that 1 at the end. Next one does not. This one has 2 and a 2. Working just like we would expect. Great way to identify risk. You could also use that in a formula off to the side and then filter on it if you want to just use that way. Now, last thing here, a lot of conditional formatting options in here, and you may want to format those highlights exactly the way that you want. You would just run this macro called set conditional formatting defaults. So it looks like this. Okay, it's going to create this sheet that you're seeing right here, show you all your existing values where then you can update them. Okay, so you may want them all to be yellow, maybe sometimes pink, maybe a combination here for the cell tracker makes it very easy to do that. So hopefully with this update you found a lot of things that are helpful for saving time, reducing risk, and just making Excel easier. Lots of shortcuts, right? So if you want to try this out for yourself, check out that QR code on your right. If you want to see the top 50 tools ebook that save me and my colleagues 200 plus hours a year, hit that QR code up on the left to download that. Thanks for watching. Have an excellent rest of your day.